back to like what we're going to do here for the agenda this afternoon is we actually want to debrief a little bit first about the session we just had. And then we'll talk a little bit about PE, as I said we would. And then we'll set up the like P for P and the VBR, and it'll walk through that program so you understand the details of that for the 2024 period. And then we set aside some time to work on the quality intervention templates and Michelle will work up. That's kind of the agenda for the afternoon. We really want to hear some feedback from all of you about what just happened. You know, this is the first time that, of course, we've ever had a collaborative meeting with another CQI. It's not a topic that is not our direct focus, specific to the core initiatives within MEDIC, but obviously of high relevance to a lot of what we work in emergency departments generally. And so recognize that fit isn't was imperfect in certain ways, but nevertheless important too. And so we really want to understand at multiple levels, you know, around like sepsis specifically, potentially as a topic, theme about sort of the, you know, feasibility mechanics of the meeting even, and really for us to learn a little bit best we can from the process, and what happened, mostly for us to sort of plan for next steps and, you know, whether it's around sepsis, whether it's around future meetings, for us to learn from, you know, to be honest, a bit of an experiment that we just ran. So this is the kind of thing I'm just gonna like kind of pause and not talk, and make people uncomfortable with silence. But I'm open to like any way to sort of start this conversation and discussion. And we have 15-20 minutes here. We want to talk. Any reflections are fine. Just start. Oh, good. Thanks.
I'll bring you guys.
Yeah, please.
I'll make a comment that I think it was useful to see another CQI in action and to see the kind of work and scope that they're doing, and also to expose us a little bit to some things that we may have kind of interest in. I also left being very glad that sepsis is not one of our measures. As a recovering sepsis champion, it's really hard work and it's complicated. And but I do see our role there, so it's nice we connected with some people looking forward to see, you know, how we can start having dialogue about some things too from a patient standpoint. I would also say too that, you know, maybe it stirs the pot a little bit for opportunities. I mean, the ASB thing really that struck a chord of the morning to say, you know, we're prescribing all of these, they're doing a measure on it and they're doing work on it. How maybe should we be getting involved or really taking part in this and you know, why isn't this our measure? You know, so I think that there's some value out of doing these periodically. We're with a group that would have as much overlap as they do.
It was very challenges of measuring sepsis and the improvement process around that, although I'm sure all of you were having to sort of do those things in your shops anyway, even if we're not directly doing it in your medic. And the other overlaps, like you said, with HMS, are some things that we really like, but they measure lots of other reactions? No, Michelle, good.
You know, part of this too is that I appreciated the CDC speaker, Dr. Trinavason, you know, was very good. And one of my biggest fears was that, you know, HMS is phenomenal what they do, but they don't do it for anybody less than 18. And so a lot of the sources and the things that we do, you know, and it, you know, could be just like we do head injury, the, you know, rules for adults, and we figure out what works with kids, but we measure it as a, you know, a solidified module. So anyway, I know the dust hasn't settled on sepsis. I think it's a very important problem, but like Seth said, I mean, it's complicated and it ain't easy, and we have talked about this before. And that's one of the reasons we, have not been working in it quickly, so it's just, we need maybe a little bit more time. Yeah, thank you for all the patience, especially the pediatric people in the room. I did like the core measures, spoke at a very high level. And in that one graph, I was like, look at those peds hospitals there, in there, we're rocking it, and sometimes to some extent faster than the adult groups. Really pleased to see that.
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of internal conversations about how we can be inclusive in role for pediatrics within sepsis care, and did our best to at least include that at times in the joint session. But it's challenging because HMS doesn't focus on the care. Awesome. Okay, good.
Two quick points I'll make. One, I like the format of today. I like how we have our own session and some sessions together, just to get our business done. And to kind of echo the idea that we were able to learn some things from them today, able to see that we have a big role to play in asymptomatic bacteriuria and a big role to play in sepsis. I remember just a couple of months ago, us specifically with COVID in our CT angiogram, we were talking about how the hospitals kept asking us to order all these CTAs. And so I think that there's a lot of room for us to continue to learn from each other and learn from us and learn from them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point that we didn't focus a lot of attention on, but again, just like what is the overlap between our quality initiatives and medic as they influence hospital care delivered to, and other ways that we can better influence things that are important to us, that cascade in the hospital, that we get pressure to awareness. Imaging decisions for sure. Your example, we hit out like pediatric respiratory diseases, like you need a chest X-ray if you're gonna admit this person to the hospital, kind of thing. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting perspective you put on it. That was where our discussion went to. And I frame it in the sense of, it's sepsis is a hospital, not a sepsis PD. Similar to a trauma center, like I don't care if I'm trauma 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm gonna run the same way. And when people ask me what it is, it's a hospital, it's a trauma hospital. And I think that was a discussion in a time-sensitive condition like this. I'll use my own institution. We do very well with, STEMIs, right? But I have a cardiology team who's someone who comes to the ED, and I get my patient disposition for different care. And I think to have that discussion in the setting of sepsis, in trying to get the hospital to understand the importance of that, is something that I find challenging and where I want to take the next level with the hospital. But I always get the kickback of finances and whatever else that, with all the other ideas I have in the ED.
Just one other quick comment.
I don't know others' experiences, but I think the only other CQI that we get measured on that we really get no input about is MT-QIP. And I will say I find that very frustrating. That I've got trauma surgery coming and telling us we've got to do all these head CTs in front of everybody else and their TPA candidates, and we have no say so in the development of that measure. So that's one in particular that maybe worth anything that someone's measuring how we do our work, try to interface with them and influence them.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So MT-QIP is the CQI version for trauma care. So they focus on basically like level 1, level 2 trauma centers, and they have this measure about like advocating for time-dependent CT use in patients with head pain who have bleeding risk. So those on like anticoagulation. So it does have this challenge of like we're measuring sort of different cohorts of people, but like at the same time, like the same type of measure going in different directions. But we're trying to reduce reliance and trying to increase reliance. So they're different cohorts, but still it's market. Jason.
Just one thing that resonated with me about the conference was regarding communication. And I'm a biased party, I said, receiving a lot of questions from the ED. And so just kind of one thought, obviously, this could become a lot, but is some kind of standard towards, you know, handing off a sepsis patient. Like we did X, Y, and Z, you need to do that. Or this patient had an abnormal urinalysis, I did not give antibiotics, I'm handing that decision to you. You know, like just having that communication, figuring that stuff out. Because if you have two parties that are not interested because they're studying it, it seems like a real neat opportunity to create some kind of communication standard for that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that coming out of maybe the small group activities today, you know, that was identified as a area solution.
And there are tools that currently exist for the communication handoff. I'm very useful. I said it's like last year, I figured, by the way, we're going 100% having this tool for handoff.
So there's other things out there for that.
Yes. Yeah. Or just saying, there's definitely some standards around that. I think one of the things that we want to know a little bit about the reporting center is, you know, frankly, this type of like planning and work coordination took a lot of work. You know, a lot of investment in the team to get it all done. And so in part we're trying to learn like, was it worth it? You know, did you guys get something of value from this experience? You know, certainly on sepsis and ways that you can improve coordination around sepsis care locally when you get back home, or certainly serve more water than that. I mean, that kind of feedback I think really helps us understand, you know, that's something we want to try again. Is sepsis such an important condition that we should consider certainly back to it again in the future in some way too? I think that's also some of the things that we want to learn a little bit about today too. I don't know if there are any like reactions or thoughts about that.
If we go somewhere with better parking.
But apart from the no snow.
Well, and I just want to say, we do have a survey that's going to be asking these specific questions to you a little bit later, so if you don't feel comfortable saying it now, you can certainly put it in your survey.
Yeah, thanks.
I know it's a big driver of what's healthy, it's worthwhile coming back to it. Sepsis, I mean, yeah.
I mean, I imagine that many of you in this room may be playing multiple roles here, you know, locally. And again, I feel like sepsis is much like the top line item priority. It's like maybe something we can circle back to.
I think I would like to see a little bit more circling back to sepsis as well. I think one of the big benefits of Medic is the amount of data and the tools that the ED specifically receives. And I think the data that we would probably be able to get if we were to focus on it within the Medic community would be really helpful and get to that granular level that we might not see within the HMS collective. I think there's some value there.
I mean, the kind of thing then, like we should be working with HMS to figure out how some of their like reports that may be tailored could get back into the hands of you locally.
I think that would be a great start, right? So that we have access to the data, we have frontline clinicians that I think are there, and how we would be able to then leverage that data to look at our own individual processes. I think could be really helpful.
Okay.
Especially for some of our shops that might be running lean, maybe you don't have as many sepsis resources dedicated. So for those people that are wearing multiple hats, I think that could be a pretty big value.
Okay, yeah. Another hand? Oh, yeah, no.
I was just gonna add, that I agree, I'm not sure if we're ready to do more sepsis from Medic, but maybe in due time. Or maybe what we need to look at is the handoff, right? We started in the ER, we're first recognition, we should be able to recognize it. And then hand off to the admitting team. one of our discussions was around board, we all have boarded patients, right? How many of these boarded patients become septic, or maybe we didn't recognize it, or the vitals weren't recognized. And the next thing you know, the patient's deteriorating. So, maybe this is something we look to in the future, but I don't want to right now.
Any comments out there about, or more like on the side of, it was cool, but like, not so great, that like we should try to do this again, which is, a fine position to have too, and that's just valuable to us, as well as, and again, like, if this isn't the moment to speak up, then we do have that survey Kara was talking about, we're gonna send out to you, and we definitely want that feedback too.
I think the beauty of being in a collaborative is having the ability to troubleshoot what each person or each site is doing. And I didn't see running a ton of that. I just got more what HMS is kind of pushing for on the metrics, high level stuff. But some of that benefit, I think we maybe missed today.
Yeah. Could I use the word like technical things, like, so you go back, so, this is the thing that we really need to prioritize.
Yeah.
As the
Toolkit or,
okay. So, thanks. I was looking at my clock. Dinner too.
I think the other thing really quick that Seth kind of touched on is, medics actually a pretty hot commodity right now. Everyone wants to work with us, because we do great work and we touch a lot of patients in a lot of areas. And so it would also be useful for us in our prioritizations. These different groups come to us and say like, oh, this really resonates. Like, sepsis is the thing and we need to work with a hospital that's not at the end of versus trauma versus pediatric asthma versus pick year 1 of 20 CQIs. It's a good problem to have, but it requires prioritization. So feedback on that is also helpful.
All right, a little bit there. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so survey's coming. Okay, so I'm gonna do a like an entree, it's an entree into a reboot. And I just want to remind everybody about sort of how we got into diagnostic field and we're measuring our performance over time. And part of the motivation for this is I think we talked about this in various ways, but we've seen like a degradation in our performance over time, and there are reasons behind that. But we want to kind of reboot and emphasize this work going forward. So we began measuring this back in 2016. It became a performance index measure and a P4P measure in 2018. And we spent like a lot of time and effort, launched the work group. Many of you were involved with that. We sorted through the evidence, thought about like how to approach this in a consistent and standardized way. Given the fact that there really is like a ton of evidence around various types of say decision rules, and we had to like as a group, as a network, kind of work our way through all that to determine like how best to go about thinking about improvement. We did that work, and then like COVID happened. And to be honest, this has been in the back burner, since COVID. We kind of let off the gas. We recognized that there was a lot of influences around the care of COVID that were also having these differences in decisions and CT use. We didn't feel like it was fair to continue to measure this in a performance index way. And so we let off the gas, which was a great decision. But for the upcoming, 2024, cloud-wide measure, diagnostic field was part of that. Now, we got a small number of points sort of assigned it. But still, this is gonna be more fun, for the next year. And so we want to rethink this, work. You can see here what I was alluding to, we're seeing a lot of improvement, in those early years. This is our diagnostic yield measure. Here, the green zone is the yield above 10%. Diagnostic yield meaning the frequency with which a CT scan identifies the acute pulmonary embolism, higher rate value. So we had this kind of peak period in 2020, 2021 with diagnostic yield as a network, over this threshold target of 10%. And then you can see it been tailing off since then. And in some of it's like we did it. Why can't we do it again? We'll talk about that. Yeah, here's a little bit more detail about the month differences in diagnostic yield just in the last couple of years. Again, with this sort of general theme of loss of improvement. And even sort of small changes in diagnostic yield, because of the how frequently we're doing these CT scans, even small changes make big differences in the number of studies being done. So in this case, like even a 2% diagnostic yield change is like 9,000 scans avoided. So it's a lot of tests hidden behind that measure. We've talked about this within the executive committee and sort of worked through a process about figuring out how to implement it within the performance index for next year. I mentioned that already. We're gonna make this a focus of our virtual meeting in February. And certainly one of the things that we hear a lot and hear pretty clearly articulated from many of you is like, you need to help us better identify opportunities that are actionable within our data that help us improve. And I agree with that. And so one of the things that we've been working on in the background is building out a suite of reports that we think can help you in your process do this kind of work. And we think there are kind of three key decisions around the PE, the CT PE workups. One is obviously just the decision to initiate the workup. That's probably where there's a lot of opportunity. That's a little bit harder to measure, but we think we have ways, at least at the high level, to give some information back about that. This use of D-dimer first versus CT first, I think is another kind of actionable opportunity. We think we've got some ways to provide feedback and measurement around that. And then we think the other opportunity is around use of age adjustments in interpreting D-dimers. And we think we have ways to report and measure that back to you. For those abstractors, they're probably aware of this. We actually have asked everybody to give us their actual D-dimer assay lab tests, so we know how you guys are measuring this, because there are probably about 3 different assays out there, and they each have different characteristics. And with that information integrated into our reporting structures, we can begin to feedback how often the D-dimer associated with CT scan, if it had been interpreted as a age adjustment, perhaps could have avoided that study. So we're building out this capability, and we plan to showcase that in February as the goal is arming you for this improvement work. So that's just a preview, and then we'll talk more about that. I guess I'll take some questions. Yes.
Feel kind of good speaking up on because my site is not officially part of that yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
but, anyways, I've been incorporating the years criteria,
Yeah,
pretty regularly now into their ICTs, and, it seems like it's sort of ready for prime time, I think, based on all the validation that's happened, so I don't know if that's a way to improve our D-dimer cutoffs.
yeah, so, it's probably important you raise that, and when we were working through this process as a group, sort of weighing the evidence, again, sort of 2019. From what I recall, that year study had just, the original year study had just come out at that time. I think as a group, we felt like hard to know how to incorporate that into the work of improvement in the standardization processes that we have. But if it's time to revisit that, and this would require sort of thinking it through as a work group, then, I think that could be understood. But right now, we don't measure in that way. But it could be a future state where we could. Yes.
How many does actually have, many does we down and print out and have not this decision interpretation of it is like a 0.67 reason.
Yeah.
70.
Yeah, I certainly don't know that off the top of my head. I mean, presumably we'll know that with the results when the survey is submitted, and if that is something that we can bring that up. And highlight that in February. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take that and go. All right. You're up.
Okay, I will try to go relatively quickly through the 2024 PPP and GDR stuff. This will be literally the exact same stuff that was in the videos that I sent out. Judging by the YouTube views, right, may not have all watched it, but it is bad. So, okay, just a real quick reset on how this all works. Each year, coordinating center comes up with a starting point for our PPP DVR, take it to the executive committee through 3 or 4 meetings, that kind of goes back and forth, and we settle on what we're going to work on for the next year, and then of course the final approval for that comes from Blue Cross. That process has become pretty standard at this point. So just a reminder of how this works. If you're your first year, it's 100% starting out with paper performance PPP. This is money that goes to the hospital, not money that goes on physician claims. 100% is on participation in your first year, 70 on participation, 30 on performance in your second year, and 70 on performance, 30 on participation in your third year. For the first time in my time here, we don't have anybody in our year one. Hopefully that'll change soon. Just a couple of our freestanding EDs in the second year. So most of you are, and most of those are actually rolling in from other sites, P4D. So pretty much everybody has been working in this year 3+ way of doing the P4D. I will go through these in I'll show you your choices. I'll try to do this faster, but the one thing I do want to highlight is for the first time in a couple of years, we actually made a change on the participation section of the P4P. It's a pretty small change, but we've got 10 points dedicated to the kind of the IT work that goes on behind the scenes. So 5 of it is sending new data upload every month. This is probably something most people in this room are not directly involved or even indirectly involved with, probably. And then after the files are sent correctly. That used to be 5 points and 5 points on that. We made a change this year because there is another process that we didn't have accounted for in the P4P, which is each year we do make some changes what that data file looks like. And that does require your IT folks to go through a couple iterations with Susie and Yuki, make sure that they're sending the right files. We've had a little bit of trouble kind of nudging some sites to get that done, honestly, in the last couple of years. So we made a change to this coming year's P4P. So it's still 10 points total for this process, but now there's 4 on timeliness, 4 on accuracy, and then 2 points on doing this data sharing update with us. So usually we send that out in the end of the year. You know, we give the IT folks 2, 3, 4 months to like go through the process of this. So it's not hopefully, you know, too tough of a deadline, but it is something we wanted to add a little bit more of a call out specifically this process needed to happen. Okay, so for the performance part of the P4P, you have a couple choices to make. 25 points this year are going to be on your site-specific discharge measure. So everyone can choose between low-risk testing or timeliness of steroid administration. So this is, you know, we set up these points. In a way that, you know, you can, if you make the target, totally you get all 25 points, but there are partial, you can get partial credit essentially of this. So for the low risk testing, the target this year is 94% discharge for these patients. If you do better than you did last year, but don't quite get to 94, you get 15 out of the 25 points. And if you show that you're working on it by doing your area reports every month, you can at least get 10 out of 25. If you don't make it, if you don't get better than you were last year, we'll make it to the 94%. With steroid administration, it's 58% of patients getting steroids within 60 minutes. And again, same thing, do better than you did last year, but don't get 58, you can get 15 points and do all the work, but don't really, you can get 10 out of 25. So this is the choice you'll have to make. And that's on your intervention template that you'll be turning in by August. The other choice you have to make is on your head injury measure. Again, choice between adult and peds. If you see both patients, you will see these patients. You don't really have a choice. For the adult measure, greater than 68%, this has been kind of inching up a little bit year over year. And for the peds measure, less than 70% utilization on the intermediate risk, low risk head injuries. Okay. And we have 3 collaborative measures. Keep alluded to the PE one. So 5 points on PE diagnostic field. Target's 8.5%, which is lower than we've worked on before. So hopefully that can be achievable. And I think the goal with this is to just kind of level out that decline of performance that you were showing earlier. In fact, just get us kind of back moving in the right direction. Chest X-ray, 5 points, plus 31% utilization. And then for the first time in 2023, we did all of our baseline work on naloxone distribution. So this is a collaborative measure for everybody in 2024, trying to get over 41% distribution. And this does count, I don't know if you noticed in the slide we showed this morning, where there's that breakdown of actually delivered, prescribed, offered, and refused. All of those count. So you're trying to get to the 41% of the documented physicians offering or suggesting that the naloxone be distributed to the patients involved, or ideally you'd like it to be actually distributed, but at this point you still get credit if you give a prescription or if they don't use it. Okay, so what do you need to do? Couple things. Basically it's choose. So everyone has to introduce your safe discharge measure, chest X-ray or asthma. Your 3 sites again is essentially everyone, also then needs to choose your head measure, adult or peds, and that will be on your intervention. You can ideally actually fill out a circle on your intervention template where it asks you to choose, and those are due then that Zendesk to us by the 7th November. Questions about P2P? Okay, so VBR, deadline for this last week, VBR was last night or today, so you're not getting, hopefully, the week from me for a while. We'll probably come again to do the case the next time. Again, same as last year, we got 3 different VBR opportunities. This is the money that's the fee schedule increase on your claims, Blue Cross, commercial PPO. So same type of breakdown, 3% of it is on a collaborative performance, 2% is on individual physician performance, and then
we have voluntary 2% smoking cessation BDR again as well. So for the collaborative life performance, we've basically not changed this ever. You know, it's head injury. Everyone's working on these together. Our targets. So the reason these targets are a little bit different than the ones we saw in P is that it's not all the same. It's depending on everyone's contracts and move across. Some are in both BDR, some are in one or some in the other. So that's why the targets end up being different. But for this 3% collaborative life BDR, this is an all or nothing. So everyone working together. If we meet both of these targets, every physician who's enrolled in the POs and it's in our database will qualify for this 3% fee schedule increase on their plans from across commercial PPO. If we miss either of them, nobody gets anything. There's no participation other than being enrolled in the Blue Cross PO. Nothing you have to actively do with this one other than meet the performance target. The second one is this individual physician DVR thing that I've sent a ton of emails about over the last month. This one we changed a little bit this year. So in the last year, each hospital had to choose 2 measures to work on. And the physicians were graded individually. So if each physician, if their performance met the target, they got the money. If they didn't, they didn't. Working through this with the executive committee, we changed this a little bit because honestly, the sample size got to be a problem. So we'll have physicians who have like 2 cases of following to work for a whole year. So, you know, you can either be 0, 50, or 100, and that is just hard to make that really meaningful. So the way this is going to work is that each site needs to choose one of these 4 measures to work. Then your group will work on that measure as a whole. And then if you meet your measure, everyone that qualifies will get an additional 2%. If you don't know, you know, I think there's pluses and minuses. You know, the one is that we get away with the positive of doing this way, like I said, we get away from this sample size issue where you get not really meaningful data on people. The downside is that you know, potentially you could have a third of your docs meet the target, 2/3 not meet it, and then no one gets it because you don't get to it as a group. So I don't know, it's different. I don't know if it's better or worse. You know, we'll get feedback. We'll see how it goes. So what you need to do, choose one of these 4 measures. So again, the targets are the same targets that we were working on before. Well, they're a little bit different. And this will all be sent out to you. So choose which one of these imaging measures you want to work on. Then you need to get you need to meet the target for your site deal. The part that is going to be the hassle for all of us, to be honest, is that we are still going to do this participation part with the physicians. You know, we thought about just throwing this out and just saying, you know, if you get the performance, you all get it. If you don't, you don't. But some of the analysis we've done, it has shown that you know, for as probably annoying as this whole process is, that the people who do log in, fill out the survey, get their data, do better than those that don't, and those that log in and maintain their performance that they were with the previous year, and those that don't. So it's a hassle, I get it, I know, but it does seem to actually work. So we are going to keep this individual participation part in it. So all of your docs are going to have to keep their Tableau registry. They're going to have to complete the survey, and this will be March through August 2024. This is where it's going to get different, is that, like I said before, if the individual physician, they don't have to actually meet the target as an individual, as long as your entire group does. So it's, you know, gone from this being an individual kind of sport to a team sport within your site. So like I said, it's good, and that the ones that don't meet it can qualify. You know, it could be that if you have, you know, a percentage that meet the target, but you don't as a team and then no. So it didn't feel like a great explanation, so I'm definitely open to questions on that. Questions? This is all in the videos, by where I get it back. This one. Okay.
Our community health. We have a lot of, mid-level providers and they run our provider triage, so they order a ton of our imaging study. So they're not attributed to the mid-levels in Tableau, they go to the docs, so the data for us is sort of, I don't trust the data, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as far as this incentive goes, the good news is that it doesn't really matter which individual that it's contributed to, because it'll be your, you know, your entire site's performance. That'll dictate whether you get the incentive or not. At this point, Blue Cross doesn't have a mechanism to pay BBR to PAs and NPs. So it's a limitation that, you know, that we're aware of. I don't really, you know, you can sort within our Tableau registry versus attending provider versus ordering provider, which will show you, you know, your APPs. And then, you know, that would be a potential opportunity for QI work to, you know, identify who, if you have particular APPs that are kind of making your performance sag. But yeah, at this point, yeah, it is a limitation. I don't know, direct answer to work. But to the CBR, it shouldn't really matter because it's all your cases, regardless of who the doctor is.
Can I say something about the PAs? There's a lot of, you know, systems in this room that all involve, you know, physicians, assistants, or practitioners, things like that. But I look at that, and I don't know how others feel in the room, is a quality improvement opportunity, you know, to involve them in your team, in your medic team. And there's no reason that they can't do that. And then they become part of the solution instead of the outlier, you know, challenge to it. So I don't know if other people have already done that. Anybody wants to speak to that? I'd sure like to hear it, but you know, until we get a very specific resolution to it, I think that's another very positive way to answer the problem.
All right, so last one, there's 2% available. This is again through our partnership with the Healthy Behaviors CQI for smoking cessation. This is 100% optional. This does require IT work. There's no abstraction of this, but you do have to get your IT folks to build out a data feed for us, and then, you know, as we're learning now, make sure that it's actually the right data feed that matches up with what actually happens in the PD too, which is a process. So this is unchanged from 2023. You know, as Keith showed this morning, we're getting like 2 or 3% a month of these patients that are actually receiving are getting documented as receiving this cessation counseling. So we've not changed the targets on this at all. So this is COPD patients that come to your ED that have a diagnosis of COPD and have a documented status of being an active smoker, and whether or not they either received or referred to smoking cessation counseling. You need to get 1 month during the year where 10% of those patients receive this counseling. It seems like a low number, but I think we're essentially starting from zero on a lot of this, so you know, we're building up towards it. So if you want to do this, what you need to do is work with, you know, talk to us, work with your IT folks, and start sending us the data. If you're already doing it, we don't need to change. You do need to make one choice though on this. You can choose, essentially, depending on the workflow that you set up in your hospital, you can either get measured on all of your ED COPD patients, just those that get admitted, or just those that get discharged. It seems like most want to work on the patients that are discharged directly from the ED, because I think that's where people feel like they have the most ability to make that intervention. But if you want to tie it to your patients that get admitted out of the ED, that is also right. Let us know. We can get ready to go. Okay, so next steps on VBR. Make sure everybody's enrolled in the Blue Cross, each physician organizations. If you're doing the 2%, which you may as well, pick which one of the 4 measures you want to do. Make sure everyone's got a Tableau account. It's easier to do it now than in, like, you know, the 10 days before the deadline. And make sure everyone fills out the survey. You have 6 months to do it, but I know it comes up against the deadline a lot. And then if you want to do smoking, work with the IT to make sure that you're actually setting your status, your consultant status, constant status, and let me know, that it's obviously not right, your target option as soon as you can. Yeah. And videos exist, so everything I said, if you're on our YouTube page, feel free to go watch those and email. Like,
Okay. We're almost done. What we're gonna do now is our QI intervention template. We want to maximize the time we have with you face your groups. And, I'm gonna try to do is just get you to begin or to think about your quality improvement template for the coming year, understanding all of them just went through. As Andy said, they are due to us by send us by November 7th, so it's kind of, in the next 2 weeks. Really, we encourage you to think about this as a team, maybe in the past, you had some team members that weren't actually on the team, or they couldn't meet or whatever, and we did try to publish. But the template provides a foundation for, the subsequent narrative reports that are submitted on a monthly basis. So this is really what we're gonna work on, choosing all those things, and then the subsequent reports are sort of updates to that plan. So we just want to remind everybody, I know we're gonna work on this a little bit today. It doesn't have to be that you start something completely new. You can take off from where you were last year. Maybe there's more to be done in the way you set it up last year. So we don't want you to absolutely, confine yourself to new year, February, and kind of stuff. So what's working, what's not, that's what we need to discuss today with your team and figure that out as we plan tonight for 2024. So remember, on the website, we have spots for quality improvement tools. So, we're gonna, in front of you on your tables today are the key driver diagrams. We spoke about before, spent some time with another colleague or another supply meeting where we throw those out. Where are the problem points? And then what are the fine tuning of those problem points? It's a helpful way to do that. So they are available to you 24/7 off of our website. So you can use those today if you feels like it, could be of help to you. So that's why they're out there. You don't have to. We're not going to collect them, but it's a nice framework for problems for outlining what you're going to do. Questions? Okay. So this is what should be in your packets for you. As Amy pointed out, really, we often get these templates back where what you chose is not on there. We have to kind of catch up with you to figure that out. So please pay attention to that. For those of you who have choices, I know the children's sites, it's gonna be a click button for each of the pediatric measures, but make sure that when you return them to us that we actually know what you're working on. Super helpful. And then you'll see your, basically your performance targets over time. And then what we really want to know is just, basically your choices that you're working on and the strategy today, start thinking about, am I building off the things we did before that we maybe they work, maybe they need, diving in further, versus are we going to focus on maybe a new aspect of the key driver diagram where the problem is, we really haven't worked on it. Let's say we made some progress, but not completely.